Sea of Souls is a show from BBC Scotland, created in 2004, and deals with a small team based in a Glasgow university that investigate the paranormal. It's well written, understated, usually serious, lasted 4 series, and unlike most similar shows, it usually veers into science. The lead is parapsychology academic and mostly skeptic Douglas Monaghan, played by Bill Patterson, with a rotating cast of student assistants, and in Series 4, no assistants at all. Series 1 and 2 are 90-minute stories split into 2 45-minute episodes, while Series 3 is 6 45-minute stories and 4 is a single 90-minute story in 2 episodes. Anyway, this is all very nice, but not enough to hang an episode on, so I'd like to let you know that Sea of Souls is totally a Doctor Who spin-off. But that got your attention, if you didn't see the name of the video. The producer of Sea of Souls was one Phil Collinson, who left after the first series to work with Russell T Davies on a little show called Doctor Who, becoming New Who's first producer in 2005. Later on, Torchwood was introduced, Torchwood 1 in London, Torchwood 3 in Cardiff, the mysterious Torchwood 4 that vanished, and Torchwood 2, which according to Captain Jack is a single guy in Scotland. Glasgow, to be exact.
Torchwood 2 is an office in Glasgow. Very strange man.
The show's never expanded on that, and it was intended to be a reference to Sea of Souls. Audios, books, and comics have come up with their own take on who runs Torchwood 2, but I go with what was said on screen. Because turning this mostly forgotten but well-written Scottish drama into part of the Whoniverse is just too perfect. You might wonder how this could possibly be Torchwood 2, given that Monaghan usually has assistants. But this actually works perfectly, because Monaghan never mentions Torchwood. He technically works alone. He is Torchwood 2, and his assistants aren't, because they've never heard of Torchwood. It's compartmentalization taken to the extreme. I even quite like that his remit is trying to prove the paranormal. Torchwood 1 deals with weird stuff that's known, aliens and stuff. Torchwood 3 is just dealing with the Cardiff Rift. Torchwood 4 vanished, I assume it was in Ireland, did terrible things during the Troubles and was deleted by the Doctor. And Torchwood 2 deals with expanding the range of what is known. It's a low-key, investigates the supernatural, and if it proves something is real, then it's added to Torchwood 1's job, defending the British Empire.
There isn't a British Empire.
Not yet.
It's a low-key because the last thing they need is to be bothered by time-wasters or deliberate charlatans. And keeping Torchwood 2 small helps them stay low-key. And the student assistants help disguise the extra Torchwood reasons for what they do. Keep it hidden in plain sight as basic scientific research. It's so well disguised that you could watch the show and have no idea that it's even a Torchwood. Because it wasn't when it was written. Genius. I'm being tongue-in-cheek here, but the mention of Torchwood 2 was an actual reference to it, and it all fits perfectly. Which is good enough for me. Anyway, Collinson was far from the person from Sea of Souls to end up on Who. A lot of actors turned up in both, and the director of photography, Ernie Vinze, was directly poached from Sea of Souls to set the look of the show under RTD, and kept the job until Waters on Mars. Okay, now that I've explained Sea of Souls and how it's Torchwood 2, I thought I'd take you through Series 1 just to give you a taste of it, to see if you want to add it to your own personal Whoniverse. First up, I have no idea what the stories in Series 1 are called. In the case of Story 1 and 2, the Wikipedia article, the DVD, and the DVD booklet all disagree. And in the case of Story 3, the DVD booklet and the DVD agree, but the Wikipedia article disagrees. So you're going to get some alternative titles. Story 1 is called Seeing Double in Wikipedia, Shades of Evil in the DVD, and Possession in the DVD booklet. I have no idea why. Anyway, it's about a colleague of Douglas's called Carol who specialises in art and psychology. She's played by Siobhan Redmond, who played the Rani in Big Finish, and is married to Peter Capaldi. In the show, not real life. One day she meets Helen, the twin sister she didn't know existed. They were both adopted, and they're struck by odd coincidences in their lives. Both art teachers, both have similar sayings, both are married to men called Gordon, both at important events in Blackpool, but that's not paranormal. Oh no, the paranormal stuff happens because they seem to be telepathic, but only with each other. They quickly develop a close relationship, and when Helen's husband is killed in a car accident, Carl witnesses it telepathically. Helen then moves in with Carl and her family to recover from the crash, and stuff gets dramatic. Their connection is increased when either of them experience anything emotionally heightened, such as the car crash, or Helen's anger and jealousy of her sister endangering her seemingly perfect life because she's in an affair with a student. Helen's also keeping a file in her sister's life full of photos and notes about her, and is developing an obsession with Capaldi. It's all very double white female. Just in case you're keeping notes, that's the Doctor married to the Rani and a different Rani as evil designs in him. Watch enough British TV and Doctor Who sometimes gets very weird. Anyway, in an unusual move for the show, Carl and Helen are the main characters, not Douglas and his team. They spend most of the story running psychic tests on the duo, coming up with theories about what exactly is going on with them, and uncovering the shocking truth that Helen is a liar with a violent past.
Douglas. She's been lying about her job. She's not a teacher, she's a teaching assistant, and she was getting a boot for hitting a kid.
Oh, dear God.
The student that Carl had an affair with takes it badly when she breaks it off and ends up murdered. And much of the second half of the plot is trying to work out which sister did it. Because one thing the story is really good at is keeping you on your toes. There is much more going on than I'm mentioning, like weird premonitory daydreams and a final twist, that I won't spoil in case you want to watch it. Story 2 is called Mind Over Matter on the Wikipedia article, Possession in the DVD, and Shades of Evil in the DVD booklet. Again, I don't know why. In some ways, it's the true pilot of the show. The leads are the paranormal investigators, they do science, it's unflinchingly dark, blasé, and expects you to know random and kind of obscure stuff to make complete sense of it. For example, this one's about reincarnation and opens in Lebanon. They actually filmed abroad, which is unusual for the first series of a BBC show. Anyway, they're investigating a kid who is maybe the reincarnation of a guy from a nearby village. They drop some details which sound kinda wrong.
You think he's lying?
Wish fulfillment.
Because it's part of their religion?
A fundamental tenet.
Like I said, this is set in Lebanon, which is 60% Muslim and 30% Christian, and neither believe in reincarnation. But the Druze, a small religion who have a population in Lebanon, do. They believe there are a limited amount of Druze souls that are constantly reborn. The show even name drops their term for reincarnation.
The Arabic word for it is takamus, which means simply changing one shot.
Anyway, that case was just about perfect, evidence-wise, but because this is Sea of Souls, they have to drop all their compelling evidence because a guy who lives near the kid knew the dead guy in the army and he could be feeding the kid information.
The man outside Salim's house yesterday was in the army with Bashir. It's a link. It's contamination.
That's how seriously the team take their rigor. Damn impressive for a paranormal TV show. Anyway, the main plot is about Joe, a little kid from London, who's near perfect at being a creepy little horror child, and claims to be George, who lived near a lake far away with his other mummy. His distraught mother eventually enlists a team to try and work out what's going on, and they track the story down to a tiny island off the coast of Scotland. The people there are strict Protestants, deeply insular, and just before Joe's birth, a local called George did go missing. They meet Tom, who was blamed by the locals for George's death, George's abusive father, and the mother who let it happen. I really don't want to go into details because this plot is a symphony of messed up and the ending is incredibly dark. They got their proof, but at what cost? This episode really cements what Sea of Souls is at its best. Bill Patterson is a guy who wants the paranormal to be true but who demands scientific rigor, and his two assistants, the skeptic and the believer. It's also by far the best of the three stories. Story 3 is comparatively simply titled, the Wikipedia article calls it That Old Black Magic, and the DVD and booklet called Voodoo Nights. This is probably the weakest of the three and deals with muti killings. Muti being a traditional form of South African medicine, and muti killings being murders done to gain body parts used in medicines. The murders are being done by a cult, and in a stroke of genius, the cult also worships Shango, an East African Yoruba god. It's a stroke of genius because the god and muti being connected doesn't make sense, and it's remarked upon.
Muti killings, it's not completely absurd.
Shango is a West African deity of the Yoruba people, not the same thing.
The cult are picking and choosing from various African traditions to create a smoothie of beliefs, which is an amazing cover for any research fails on the part of the writer. And the cult is mostly made up of wealthy white people who believe their gods and sacrifices got them their success. Anyway, an old man lies in hospital dying. His son, desperate to save his life, contacts the cult, not realizing that the only way to save a relative's life is by sacrificing the child. So he goes missing, and his sister starts experiencing weird stuff too. This is so atypical for Sea of Souls that it's basically a different show entirely. The other two were set in Scotland and lent heavily into paranormal investigation stuff, doing tests and whatnot. This one is two of the trio in London basically acting like freelance cops, trying to bust the cult and help the victim's sister before she gets murdered too. While the third is essentially tech support. I wouldn't be surprised if this script was retooled from a different show entirely. Anyway, making the cult mainly rich white assholes neatly sidesteps the problem with bringing up African belief systems, getting stuff wrong about them, uniting them into a gestalt, and connecting them with murder, but it has its own problems. It means that most of the actual black characters in this story about African stuff are limited to small parts. Sure, there's Yemi, the main guest star, the sister who needs to be helped, but the rest are her brother, who's the victim, their dad who's dying, a cop trying to bust the cult, and a friendly Soma, or traditional African healer, who's pissed off with the murderous perversion of his beliefs. Hilariously, the old man who's dying was played by Lewis Mahoney. You probably won't recognize his name, but he played old Billy Shipton in New Who Series 3, where he also spent all his time in a story lying down in hospital and dying. Anyway, it's ironic that this is the worst story because with the team running around and trying to stop a cult who may or may not have magic powers, but definitely have power and influence, this is the closest thing of the three to a full-on Torchwood story. It'd just be much more brainless and probably a bit more racist if it was Torchwood. Especially early Torchwood. Though racist by accident. Anyway, that was Sea of Souls, far more low-key, gritty, dark, and for want of a better word, grown up than any Doctor Who spin-offs I've managed. It's basically the sort of show that early Torchwood would have been if they turned down the ridiculous, removed the dumbass glowy tech, quadrupled the writing quality, and actually wrote it with an adult audience in mind. If you like the sound of that, there's 10 more stories spread along 14 episodes. Series 1 and 2 are out in DVD, Series 3 and 4 aren't, and are much harder to find. Sorry.